Welcome back to Duelists of the Roses. You up to?
Jasper Dice Tudor. I'm Jasper Dice Tudor. I will show you the true meaning of power.
Okay then.
Okay, Grandpa. Alright,
So wait a second. Like in this alternate history, both Yugi's a version of Yugi's grandpa and a version of his ancestors coexist?
apparently too.
Yes.
Sorry?
Apparently,
Yes.
It's weird.
I get the
Yes,
feeling
Theo.
too.
Yes,
Even for
Theo,
the
this
standard of these.
I was about to say, yes, Theo, this installment in a series about a bunch of people who bring trading cards to life is indeed weird.
Well, yeah, but even for the logic in universe, it just feels weird. Of course, he's piloting an Exodia deck.
I get the feeling too that they wanted to do the Wars of the Roses and only thought about whose character would be who later. So I really get the feeling that since Simon is supposed to be some kind of shaman or whatever in Forbidden Roses, fine, we'll just use him as a summoner, basically.
Okay, to be fair, they did make sure to at least have Yugi's grandpa be another Tudor to show that yes, they are still part of the same lineage. So it shows that it wasn't really just about let's make this person this or that here and there. Hell, as we even saw, they did go to great lengths to even weave it so that even here, Joey and Mai have eyes for each other, historically speaking. So, honestly, I mean, as silly as it is, I do at least give them credit for not just going the easy way out and saying, oh, this person is that, no matter how much that doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things. Like, no, they at least did make sure that they would make some semblance of sense.
Anyway, Solomon.
It's funny though, out of context, you could consider this just the Yugi gang doing an amazing bout of LARPing.
Kinda like in Capsule Monsters.
Okay, actually, I don't know if I've mentioned anything about the lack of voice acting in this game, but considering this was for kids, in a way I'm actually kind of glad they aren't doing that, because I can't imagine how poor the English accents would be. Because
they probably
would they even try those in the first place? I mean, Joy still has some of his Brooklyn-esque in whatever.
I mean, when I've heard their attempts to do that in other shows, it wasn't all that great.
Okay, some better than others, but they probably would have just kept their voices relatively the same, I'm assuming.
Probably, I agree. That's why I'm having us do that, basically, where Joey still has the Brooklyn accent and stuff like that, because that's probably what they would have done. As for this character, Jasper Tudor, let's talk about Jasper Tudor. Jasper Tudor was the Duke of Bedford and Earl of Pembroke. He was also called Jasper of Hatfield. He was the uncle. Jasper was actually not the grandfather of Henry VII, but the uncle. Okay, uncle of King Henry VII of England, and a leading architect of his nephew's successful accession to the throne in 1480. So basically, he has the same role that he does in real life history. The only major difference is that Solomon was Yugi's grandfather in the show, but in here he's his uncle for the sake of.
Honestly, I'm not too surprised because, let's be honest, most often than not, if the grandpa's still alive, unless that grandpa succeeded the throne, you probably would have been the king at the time.
Also, you're not his grandfather, you're his uncle. That sounds like something you'd hear in Jerry Springer.
Indeed.
And they do have a similar enough role, being someone who does look after said king, so...
Jasper was the second son of Sir Owen Tudor and the former Queen Catherine of Valois? I don't know how to pronounce this. The widow of King Henry V of England. He was thus half-brother to Henry VI. Okay. His mother was a daughter of King Charles VI of France. Okay, which explains why. I saw this. Jasper was a descendant of Ednithad Llewellyn the Great's renowned chances. So basically, he's a descendant of Welsh nobility. This connection added greatly to his status in Wales. So there you go. The reason Yugi in this game is Welsh is because of his uncle's lineage. There you go.
I agree with a Welsh accent. I'm gonna be listening.
Indeed. In 1442, their half-brother, the king, began to take an interest in their upbringing. Sometime, okay, I think this is like after. Adulthood, Owen Tudor was released from prison. Then the ascension of the Yorkists, King Edward IV, blah 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 blah. Oh, here we go. Wars of the Roses. Here we are. So Jasper Tudor was an adventurer whose military expertise, some of it gained in the early stages of the Wars of the Roses, was considerable. Nevertheless, the only major battle he had taken part in before the Battle of Bosworth was the Battle of Mortimer's Cross in February 1461, where he lost the battle to the future king, Edward IV of England. His father, Owen Tudor, was then captured and beheaded at Hereford, where his head was placed on the market cross. Is there a head still over there at Hereford?
It's funny you mentioned that. Let me just check something first. Because I'm pretty sure the crest of Hereford, the football club, isn't a hare. It's actually a bull. And which is basically they call themselves the Bulls because they name themselves after a breed of cattle that's local to Hereford.
Oh, here you go. Jasper Tudor also brought up his nephew Henry Tudor, whose father Edmund Tudor had died before his birth. So much like how Yugi's grandpa raised Yugi. After being welcomed by King Louis XI of France in 1462, Jasper stayed in France for 6 years before returning to North Wales in 1468. On his return, Jasper lost Pembroke Castle to William Herbert, when Herbert was given the title of Earl of Pembroke by King Edward IV. So in October 1483, the Tudors launched an invasion of England from Brittany. However, the invasion failed and Jasper Tudor and his nephew Henry returned to Brittany. In mid-1484, when the Duke of Brittany was incapacitated with illness, his treasurer Pierre Landais, who took over...
That sounds like something 4 kids would do.
Reached an agreement with the new Yorkist king, King Richard III of England, which we will see in this game, to send Jasper and his nephew back to England in exchange for a pledge of 3,000 English archers to defend Brittany against the threatened French attack. John Morton, aka Shadi in this game, the Bishop of Ely, who was then in exile in Flanders, learned of the scheme and warned the Tudors in time. Jasper and Henry then managed to escape separately, hours ahead of Landais soldiers across the nearby border into France. They were received at the court of King Charles VIII of France and allowed them to stay and provided them with resources. So basically, okay. On Henry Tudor's subsequent accession to the throne in 1485, Jasper Tudor had all previous attainers annulled, and thus restored to all his former titles, including Knight of the Garter, and was created Duke of Bedford. In 1488, he took possession of Cardiff Castle. So there you go.
Yeah. So Flanders, that's the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium.
A cow. Okay. Anyway, as for marriage and children, Jasper was married on November 7th, 1485, to Catherine Woodville. She was the daughter of Richard Woodville, first Earl Rivers and Jacquetta of Luxembourg, and was sister of King Edward IV's Queen Elizabeth Woodville to Anthony Woodville. Okay. She was the widow of... There were no children of her marriage with Jasper Tudor, so Jasper Tudor never had an heir. Okay, go on.
Go on.
So I was going to say something more about the anime in general, since it's Yu-Gi-Oh related.
Go on.
Anyone seen the newer ones?
Which one? The one that's currently airing?
Shows, you mean?
No.
7 specifically.
No, I have not.
Basically, I haven't seen it myself, and unfortunately, the place that's exclusive to in the UK I can't use at the minute. Basically, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s represents a major shift in the anime, not just in terms of what age group it's aimed at, but also its tone and animation studio, because basically it was the long-running animation studio they did use from the first proper series up through till I think it was Arc V. I can't remember. Let me check. Basically, the point is they're not using them anymore. They use the new animation studio, therefore new art style.
Okay. Prepare yourselves, because we're about to fight the most annoying opponent in the game, if you ask me. But first, Teo,
Shadi
you're up.
was incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
Basically, it was Gallop, but now it's Bridge.
You may have beaten me, but I doubt you'll survive a duel with my nephew Yugi.
But it was your grandson.
no. Remember this. We're doing. The characters are playing British historic figures. So.
It's like I said, it's Jerry Springer.
No, that's the thing, Teo. Shadi only requires patience. Bakura, on the other hand.
Wait, Bakura is on the same faction as Yugi?
Yes.
That's weird.
I'm guessing they didn't come up with a good reason for him to be in the Yorkist side, because technically he doesn't have anything to do with any of the characters from the Yorkists.
True, but you know, if I have to guess, Yorkie side includes all the quote-unquote antagonists.
Okay,
So-
one thing to remember, these aren't necessarily the same
Yeah.
characters. These are their ancestors, so...
All right.
Honestly, it's
All right.
more
Go ahead,
so
Dwips. Do your best Ted
parody.
Lewis thing.
So, you're the one they call the Rose Duelist. I am Bakura, a Britannia card warrior.
Ooh.
Doesn't even have a counterpart, it's just Bakura.
There was a time when some knew me as Jack Cade or
Oh,
Mortimer.
okay.
There you go, Teo.
Mm-hmm.
You stand on Celt soil where card dueling has been passed on for generations. In particular, my arse
Dark
and family
Fear? Okay.
have mastered the art of the dark duel.
Of course. Notice how... Okay, well...
Well, shall we begin?
Notice how his deck capacity, it's 757, a major decrease in number compared to Jasper Tudor. Now look at this field. Once again, a crap ton of crush spaces. Basically, Teo, it's not impossible to move in this game, in this particular field, if you have a deck with strong monsters, because it's again full of fucking crush cards. Unfortunately, unlike Shadi's not going for, trying to wear out the clock or anything. He's generally going to use weaker monsters to try to take you down. So basically, you have to try your best to put on some really... okay, here's what I suggest you do. Look, don't do what I'm about to do, because as you probably realize by how long this part is, this duel is going to go on for a while, as Teo would say. And that's because, my deck was not exactly prepared to handle this. And so don't do what I'm doing. Instead, what you do is you make sure you take out any strong monsters out of your deck and put only monsters that are under 1500 of attack points. Because if you try to be clever about this and try to, the game clearly wants you to play this duel a very specific way. And if you try to get smart, the duel will basically go on for quite a long time because, well, yeah. You're not going to be able to move that well because, again, crush spaces. Okay, see, the reason
about the game wanting you to play a very specific way, I'm pretty sure that there's still a workaround. It is definitely something of a change in tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can kind of get, since they probably want to make it so that you can't just bulldoze your way through everything along the way.
Oh, sure. I understand that. It's just that I will argue there are better ways to do that than just filling the entire field with crush space.
I wouldn't say the entire field is still with crush space, but it definitely is in a way that it would limit the motion of anyone who's stronger.
Yeah. I feel like you could have come up... It seems like the only particular way this game has of creating interesting field construction is by putting a lot of crush cards, because most of the fields in this game, even when they have like the labyrinth stuff or anything, for the most part it's fairly negligible. So you can just go around it. It's one of those cases where I feel like the level designers probably could have done a better job of creating more interesting fields, because the only fields that are noteworthy in terms of forcing you to change your tactics are this one and Shadi's. The Yorkist campaign, the Lancastrian campaign in particular, doesn't really have any opponent that forces you to play it differently. Not really. You just basically just brute force your way through, like Jova said. CTO, the reason I think this is the most annoying one is because with Shadi you can at the very least, use the clock in your favor. In here, you're literally forced to just take out all your strong muscles that you've worked so hard to grind for out of your deck, and that's just a bit frustrating if you ask me. I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they should remove the deck capacity. Like Teo said, that if they remove the deck capacity system, it would be like in Forbidden Memories, where as long as you have a strong deck, you're all set. But at the same time, I feel like we could have maybe made the duels more interesting and challenging without necessarily forcing the player to handicap himself.
I feel like there probably is still a workaround that we just don't know about in this regard.
Well, as far as I know, there is no way of changing how the field spaces. I mean, maybe there is a card that does. I looked into the magic cards and the trap card. I didn't see anyone that changes a space into a different type of space in the field. So, as far as I'm aware, there is no way around it. You just have to come here with low-powered monsters. But again, if there is something, audience, by all means, post in the comments or something, because I looked over the magic cards, I didn't see anything. Maybe I missed something, who knows, but oh well. Let's try this guy. Yeah, see? It can't even be 1500 attack points. It has to be under 1500 points. So yeah, as you can see, yeah, if you come here with strong monsters, you're gonna have trouble. However, I still do manage to beat him by basically, playing the patient. As you can see, I have more HP than him, right? So technically, I was thinking, you know what? Fuck it. I can wear out the clock as well. However, it's not actually how I beat him. I will not beat him by wearing out the clock. I do eventually manage to get him to attack me and making myself the victor, but we'll see. All right. In the meantime, since you mentioned, let's talk about Jack Cade Mortimer. Let's see. Okay, so Jack. Okay, hold on. Jack Cade's. Okay, for some reason it led the wiki page for Duelists directed me to Jack Cade's Rebellion, whatever this is. Whatever. The point is, Jack Cade's Rebellion was a popular revolt in 1450 against the government of England, which took place in the southeast of the country between the months of April and July. It stemmed from local grievances regarding the corruption, malintimidation, and abuse of power of the king's closest advisors and local officials, as well as recent military losses in France during the 100 Years' War. Okay, you know what, Lips? Maybe that's what you guys should do. You guys should do another rebellion.
No, I will do it by a children's card game.
Exactly. See, but
I don't like just throw the cards at them. No, we'll play the Prime Minister in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, and if he loses, actually, no, that's not how the real world works. But,
Boris Johnson, I challenge you to a children's card game, and if you lose, you have to fire. You have to quit.
You do know that's not how it works, right?
Yes, of course. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! So the Roses. I know how things work in Britain. But,
it's like, yeah. if only it were that simple, actually, but it isn't.
Anyway,
have to make it with our imagination.
Anyway, leading an army of men from southeastern England, the rebellion's leader, Jack Cade, marched on London in order to force the government to reform the administration and remove from power the traitors deemed responsible for bad governance. Wow. It was the largest popular uprising to take place in England during the 15th century. Despite Cade's attempt to keep his men under control, once the rebel forces had entered London, they began to loot. The citizens of London turned on the rebels and forced them out of the city in a bloody battle on London Bridge. Holy shit. To end the bloodshed, the rebels were issued pardons by the king and told to return home. Cade fled, but was later caught on July 12, 1450 by Alexander Eden, a future High Sheriff of Kent. As a result of the skirmish with Eden, the mortally wounded Cade died before reaching London for trial. The Jack Cade Rebellion was then perceived as a reflection of the social, political, and economic issues of the time period, and a precursor to the Wars of the Roses, which saw the decline of the Lancaster dynasty and the rise of... So basically, what this wiki article is telling me is that this entire game is all Bakura's fault. So there you go. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. The reason the Wars of the Roses in good old jolly England happened was because of Bakura. You heard it here first, everybody.
Of course, but since when is anything in Yu-Gi-Oh! Post his debut not his fault?
Pretty much. I mean, hell, by the final season, they really do make a good point of making it that he is more or less the big bad behind all this crap.
Hell, Jovi, you can even stretch it. You can even stretch it beyond just Yu-Gi-Oh! All the shenanigans that go on at the school in GX, you can blame it on Bakura somehow. The car games on motorcycles thing, that was his fault because he had a motorbike accident, and someone decided that you should ride do things on bikes instead of just learning the valuable lesson of don't crash your bike.
So what war crimes did he commit to make Zexel and Zexel 2 a thing?
Zexel is not in the same continuity.
He decided to make, basically, the Legacy Tyrion was somehow be his fault. He dimension skipped after trying to create the most annoying voice in the world. And that's how the main character of Zexel was born.
Also, pretty sure Zexel is still part of the continuity to you.
Not really. It's so... It has too many incongruence that it feels like it's more of a split, where 5Ds is connected back to the GX, while Zexel instead is his own thing.
Does that mean I can count Zexel as not canon? Because usually I like to dedicate 1 hour per day of pretending that anime doesn't exist. So,
if I recall correctly, didn't Zexel still get representation in?
Yes, as another dimension, however. But again, Arc V does the thing of having all the different eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being represented as separate dimensions. One for fusion, one for XYZ, one for synchro, and one for the native one for the pendulum.
Let me check and see for sure if Zexel is canon to the original timeline.
That's basically all I know is GX is related to the old show, but I'm not sure about 5Ds.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Hypercorp is still important stuff, and a character that was from season 0 is.
GX literally starts with Yugi giving a card to Jaden. So.
Dribs was wondering if 5Ds was canon at the same time. Why not GX? Like, GX is definitely blatant about it.
In the meantime, as for this is actually interesting about his identity. Very little is actually known about the identity and origins of Jack Cade, actually, given that the rebel leader did not leave behind any personal documents, and the use of aliases was common among rebels, so historians are forced to base their claims on rumor and speculation. According to Mark Anthony Lower, Jack Cade was probably born in Sussex? I don't know how to between 1420 and 1430, and historians agree for certain that he was a member of the lower ranks of society. Okay. During the rebellion of 1450, Cade took the title of Captain of Kent and adopted the alias John Mortimer. Oh, there you go. So that's what the Mortimer thing comes from. The name Mortimer had negative connotations for Henry King Henry VI and his associates because Henry's main rival for the throne of England was Richard, Duke of York, who had Mortimer ancestry. The possibility that Cade may have been working with York was enough to prompt the king into moving against the rebels without delay. At the time of the rebellion, the Duke of York was exiled in Ireland. As of yet, no evidence has been found indicating that he was involved in funding or inciting the uprising. It is most likely that Cade used the name Mortimer as propaganda to give his cause more legitimacy. Okay.
More of a case where the nickname was more important than even what the real identity was.
Seeing here. Here's a fun one. Cade's fall. After the battle on London Bridge that we already talked about, Archbishop John Kemp persuaded Cade to call off his followers by issuing official pardons and promising to fulfill the rebels' demands. Although King Henry VI had issued pardons to Cade and his followers, a proclamation written by the king shortly after the rebellion voided all previously issued pardons. The documents... what?
So basically, pulled a they basically the British government as one pulled a I lied and just
Basically.
with them anyway.
So business as usual at jolly old England. Okay. The document was entitled Writ and Proclamation by the King for the Taking of Cade. The document of the king claimed that he revoked the previous pardons, there you go, Libs, because they had not been created or approved by the Parliament. The proclamation Cade was charged with deceiving the people of England to assemble with him in his rebellion was stated that none of the king's subjects should join Cade or help him in any way. A reward of 1,000 marks was promised to whoever would capture and deliver Jack Cade to the king, dead or alive. So as a result, Cade fled towards Louis, but on July 12th, but in a garden in which he had taken shelter. But it was overtaken by Alexander, and like we saw earlier. In the skirmish, Cade was wounded and died of his wounds before reaching London for trial. As a warning to others, Cade's body underwent a mock trial and was beheaded at Newgate.
Damn.
Cade's body was dragged through the streets of London before being quartered. His limbs were sent through Kent to various cities and locations that were believed to have been strong supporters of the rebel uprising. Damn, good old King Henry VI was fucking.
As I mentioned, it was deemed not fit for ruling for a variety of reasons.
And it was basically to show this is what will happen to you if you try to rebel.
Indeed.
I will drag your body as the life leaves it through the streets of London to show you as an opposite example.
You know what's a sad part? I was joking about the rebellion, but I can totally see this happening if it was done today. Like I can totally see some kind of rebellion trying to take down the current English government, and then Boris Johnson comes up and says, "Okay, fine, call off the troops. We'll come here so we can negotiate, and maybe we'll abide by your demands." And then when you do that, then Boris Johnson takes his hand out of his back. Aha! Turns out I was lying all along. You can't even do a proper rebellion in England because the person saying, "Okay, fine, you win," will then later say, "Ha! Turns out I didn't surrender. Now you die, little man." It's like.
I mean, there was that law that Tio mentioned in another playthrough, where in York you could still got sort of a bow and arrow that only got repealed a bit ago. Relatively speaking, like I don't know how
if you did satisfy very specific conditions, you could be killed. People were authorized to kill you on the spot just by that.
I mean, it'd be like if there were a law in the US that allowed you to kill Canadians with, I don't know, a stick. If the Canadian yelled or something.
Yeah. As far as historians know, Jack didn't have a family. Apparently, he didn't marry. He didn't have children. It seems, at least based on what people know, because, like I said, because there's not a lot that is known about Jack Cade, historians basically have to make assumptions.
Again, it feels more like of a more practical version of Robin Hood, in a sense of it matters not much of the real identity, but the nickname.
I can make my own assumptions.
Go on.
What if he was never real in the first place? What if he was like a ghost or an animal?
Well, no, that we do know. That we do know for sure. There's King Henry VI himself made a proclamation about how Jack Cade sucks total balls. So
You might be referring to his pet cat, who was somehow conveniently called Jack Kate.
so yeah, the basic.
And he embellished the whole story to make his own legacy look.
What basically happened by the standards of this game is that Yugi's dad was a total asshole who betrayed Jack Cade.
Hold on. Oh wait, yeah, you're right.
Yugi's Henry the Seventh, whereas the actual king that pulled a total fooled you on Jack Cade was Henry the Sixth. So yeah, which kind of begs the question: why is Bakura working with the heir of his number one enemy? Yeah, you know what? Even by the context of the Wars of the Roses, Bakura being in this particular side doesn't really make much sense. I guess
Again. To be fair, this is technically not our Bakura in that regard.
No, but that's what I'm saying, Jova. But that's what I'm saying. This is not Bakura. This is Jack Cade. I get that. But if you take, thanks to all this we just read that Yugi's father was a total asshole to him, and yet for whatever reason, Jack Cade is in the Lancastrian side.
Keep in mind, at this point, they were still on the same side. Like, he won't do his ultimate betrayal until nearer towards the end of the war, from what the research you mentioned said. Think about it like this. It's sort of like a begrudging allyship.
You win.
It would not be the first time that certain forces have had to join forces with gritted teeth.
It's weird because it doesn't really mention anything about what was his role in the Wars of the Roses. I mean, it says that it was because of his rebellion that the Wars of the Roses started, but it doesn't say. Apparently, yeah, it says right here. The Jack Cade Rebellion was a precursor to the Wars of the Roses. So
my guess is was somebody who started it. He fell in line with this.
I warn you, your next field of battle will be your last. Be prepared to meet your maker.
Ooh, who could that be, I wonder?
And we obtained his rose card.
Very nice.
And now, the final opponent of this first campaign... Yugi, aka Henry the Seventh. And he has the highest of the deck capacity of all the opponents in this campaign, appropriately.
I thought it was going to be a Twister, it was going to be a Mokuma or something.
So yeah, now, excuse me everybody, as in between parts, I put back all my strong cards back into my deck, so I can have a proper duel with Yugi. So tune in for that, where we finish the Lancastrian campaign. Oh, sorry, the Yorkist campaign. I keep mixing the two. The Yorkist campaign. See you then.
Yeah.